Good morning, Glue Troopers. Oh, coffee. Well, first off, I want to shout out a thanks to Mr. Faulkner. He sent me some stuff, including, he used to make this thing called prop blur, which these are photo etched metal spinny props, and you put them on the airplane, paint them whatever appropriate color. So I look forward to using some of those. And some stickers. Of course, being a space kid, NASA sticker might as well be tattooed across my heart. And F-35 Lightning demo team patch, but most importantly, looky what he sent. This is a decal sheet for the CF-105, and it actually says designed by Hobbycraft Canada. Now, I'm sure this will go perfectly on the Aurora kit, but where he found this, I don't know, because this is Avro CF-105 Aero Mark 1. I was looking all over the internet, and no joy. They just didn't exist, and then this shows up in the mail. And have the choice of 201 or it's got 201, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you can do either of the arrows. I know there was 201 and 205 and a couple others, but the point is that you have the necessary numbers. Now, this is also a much more detailed set than came with the original Aurora kit. There was one person out there who made reproduction Aurora decals, and they were basically just the tail flash, the number for 201, and the 6 Canadian maple leafs. So this is much more detailed. So that, of course, will move the CF-105 further up the list now that I've got what I need to get working on that. And of course, I'll put some Restore or something on these before I get started. I'll probably use clear coat and then trim them out very carefully, use one of them, and see how that works. And then if it works okay, I'll do it that way. And if it tries to crack on me or something, I'll use the restoration material. But thank you, Mr. Faulkner. That's made life easier, and that's a jaunty little Christmas present. I've been reading the book on the Felix stove that Douglas sent me, and I had shown it to you guys last night, but the camera, the autofocus didn't work. That's why I edited that little part out. Of course, on the back it has various paint schemes, and I'd heard of the Felix stove, but I had never really done any research on it. And what I didn't realize about this airplane, because I'd never heard of the Felix Stowe Aircraft Company, and because there wasn't one. Felix Stowe is not a company, but a place, and it's where it's the naval air base that the airplane was basically developed at from the Curtiss H-4s. And I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with a rather interesting character, John Cyril Port. And anyway, long story short, Port had been invalided out of the service before World War I for some pretty serious health issues. And of course, he had started working with Curtiss on, hey Pumpkin, on trying to get a Curtiss flying boat for a transatlantic crossing, and of course the war broke out. But he basically forced his way back into the service, and he went to Felix Stowe. He was put in command there, and he had these Curtiss flying boats, and I'm giving an extremely short version of the story, but he got these Curtiss flying boats that were, to put it mildly, they were wanting. But of course, that's not surprising given that aviation was only about 11 years old. So he started modifying them, and he greatly improved them. And since they were doing it at Felix Stowe, that's where the name came from. And they went through a whole, the book's just got all kinds of iterations they went through. And so some of them have these partial canopies, mostly enclosed canopies, and some don't. There's a bunch of them here in the book that are just no two of them look alike. But eventually they developed the F2 and the F3, and a lot of the problem they were having because of flying boat, you have to remember these are very underpowered airplanes, as most airplanes were back then. And one of the biggest problems they had was getting the airplanes to be able to take off from the water under load. And if you know anything about hydrodynamics or boat hulls, you know, you have to have steps and everything. And they were learning as they went. And because the airplanes were wood construction, when a hull didn't work, they would just, some of the pictures show them knock off the sponsons and make new ones and play with different shapes. And it was just constantly modified. Since it was wood, they just, and of course there was more to it than just wood. There was this varnished silk to seal it and everything, but still, they would just keep playing with shapes, different V-hull designs, and they made one little progression when they moved the step, that cut in the hull, about 3 feet after the center of gravity. Oh, that helped, and it was a series of increments. No one thing did everything, but eventually, over time, they made enough changes and improvements that they kind of got the airplane where they needed it. And my understanding was the later version, the F2 and the F3, were actually some of the more competent designs to come out of the First World War, and they got it working, and it was stronger and more seaworthy than the Curtiss products. And Curtiss was still making planes, but the Curtiss products are considered pretty fragile and not particularly great. But Portal pushed this whole thing. He oversaw the whole thing, and he had some help and some support, but. So they finally got it working and made a good airplane out of it says the F3 was slightly larger than the F2, and that's another thing. As they were experimenting, they were changing fuselage lengths and wing tips and everything else, so the airplane went through a lot of iterations, which is not uncommon in test aircraft, especially not in those days. And of course they went through multiple engines. They had Nzinis and OX5s, and it just goes on and all the stuff that they were doing. They even at one point tried putting an anti-submarine gun post up on the top of the high wing, which turned out to be completely unworkable. Having that much mass that far above the airplane made it incredibly unstable. But they may have only flown that one time, but I'm not sure. But anyway, the book goes into it, and there was a book, I believe it was called The Spiderweb, that apparently dealt somewhat with this, and it wound up being based in Calshot, Felixstowe, Great Yarmouth, Killingholme, and other places, but those 4 bases all apparently bombed U-boats, so they were pretty effective anti-submarine tool. And I saw, just as a happenstance, I was watching a video last night, and just as pure coincidence, it was on the Texas-class battleship. I think it was Drachenfels' channel, and he did about a 30-minute thing on the Texas-class battles, or the USS Texas, which still exists today as a museum ship, although sadly it's in really poor shape. One photograph he showed, which was a post-World War I photograph, but there was a Felixstowe flying by, laying a smoke screen for the fleet, so they were used well after the war. It could have been a Curtiss, but Curtiss, because he was working with Felixstowe doing this, I'm sure would have incorporated some of Felixstowe's research. So even if it was a Curtiss, not a Felixstowe, it probably had Felixstowe influence. It looked like a Felixstowe, but it and the Curtiss were, you know, this airplane was based on the Curtiss, so obviously there would be a lot of similarity. But I'm interested to get started on it, and this book, of course, has a lot of magnificent diagrams and everything in it, and it's just it's an excellent research tool. But man, you look at it, it details some of the rigging, like on the tail, and it's like, whoa, there's going to go a couple of days of my life right there. But you know what? It's going to be beautiful when it's done. As you can tell, Honey has jumped out of the prison bedroom and out here in the sunroom, secured by a impenetrable wall of a glass door from Bella. And for those who didn't see last night's show, Bella is my sister-in-law's dog. So we have a dog and a cat. Dogs and cats living together. Well, that's what I got for this morning. Again, my thanks to Douglas and Mr. Faulkner for these things. They will definitely enhance the projects substantially. And again, want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and model on.